All right, let's jump right into one of the biggest questions you can ask. What makes us, well, human? What really separates us from our closest relatives in the animal kingdom? We're going to look at our bodies, our minds, and our very DNA to try and figure it out.
So you've probably seen this number a million times, right? It's that famous statistic that our DNA is 98.5% identical to a chimpanzee's. For years, that's been the go-to fact to show just how close we are. Like we're just a tiny tweak away from being the same. But what if that's not the whole story? Back in 2002, a study that used a different way of comparing our DNA found the similarity was actually closer to 95%. Now that might not sound like a huge drop, but think about it. Our genome has 3 times billion base pairs. That extra percentage difference, that's over 100 million genetic letters that are different. That's a ton of code to build a very different kind of creature.
So this brings up the real mystery, doesn't it? Even if the numbers are close, the differences we see in the real world are massive. It's clearly not just about percentages. It's about what those genes are actually doing. The secret isn't just in the code itself, but in how that code builds us from the ground up. Okay, so let's start with the most obvious stuff. The things you can see just by looking at us. Our bodies are, well, they're kind of weird in the primate world, and they're shaped by a totally different way of getting around. I mean, first and foremost, we walk on 2 legs. We're the only primate that does it as our main thing. And it's all thanks to our pelvis. See, ours is wide and shaped like a bowl, which is perfect for holding up our organs and anchoring the big muscles we need to walk. And ape's pelvis, on the other hand, is long and narrow. It's built for climbing trees and knuckle walking. 2 totally different designs for 2 totally different lifestyles.
But you know, this amazing evolutionary upgrade came with some serious downsides. Remodeling our pelvis made the birth canal a lot narrower. You combine that with our babies' big heads, and suddenly human childbirth is incredibly dangerous. Oh, and that S-curve in our lower back that helps us stay balanced? Yeah, that's also why so many of us end up with terrible back pain.
So the upside of standing up is that it freed up our hands to do other things. And wow, our hands are exceptional. Apes have opposable thumbs, sure, but only we can stretch our thumb all the way across to touch our ring and pinky fingers. That unique grip gives us both power and incredible precision, the kind you need to make and use really complex tools. And of course, there's the whole naked ape thing. We look so hairless. But here's a fun fact. It's actually an illusion. If you look at a square inch of our skin, we have just as many hair follicles as a chimp does. It's just that our hairs are super fine, short, and light-colored, so you barely see them. Okay, let's move from the outside in, because our bodies are different, for sure, but it's our mind that really changed the game. This is what allowed us to completely reshape the planet.
For starters, our brain is about 3 times bigger than a chimp's or a gorilla's, but it's not just about size. The really crucial difference is the complexity, especially of our cerebral cortex. That's the wrinkly outer layer, and it's the headquarters for all the big stuff: reasoning, planning, abstract thought. That's where the magic happens.
And here's a perfect example of how our brain and body work together to create something amazing: speech. It takes a whole recipe of unique features. Our voice box sits lower in our throat than in other primates. We have a special hyoid bone. Our brain has these highly specialized areas, partly thanks to genes like FOXP2. And all of that gives us the fine muscle control to form words. No other animal has this full package. I mean, sure, some apes have been taught to recognize symbols, but forming complex sentences with grammar, asking questions about things that aren't right in front of them, talking about ideas, that ability is maybe the single most defining human trait. It's not just a difference in degree, it's a difference in kind.
And that mind, coupled with language, unlocks everything else. We are the only species that writes things down to be read later. We're the only ones doing calculus, the only ones composing symphonies, the only ones building intricate machines, and of course, the only ones who figured out how to control fire.
So let's circle all the way back to where we started. If the differences are this massive, there has to be something in our DNA that explains it. Let's look at the code itself.
Here's one of the most basic black and white genetic differences you can find. We humans have 46 chromosomes in our cells. Every single one of the great apes, chimps, gorillas, orangutans, they all have 48. So you have to wonder, where did our missing pair go? Well, scientists found a really cool answer. It looks like at some point in our evolutionary history, 2 separate chromosomes that are still found in apes actually smashed together, end to end. They fused to create what we now call human chromosome 2. Now,
To figure out when a split like this might have happened, scientists have used an idea called the molecular clock. It's kind of like this. If you know a car is driving at a steady 60 miles an hour and you see it's gone 120 miles, you can calculate it's been driving for 2 hours. The molecular clock tries to do that with evolution by assuming that genes mutate at a nice, steady, predictable rate.
But, and this is a huge but, there's a major problem. That clock, it doesn't tick steadily. At all. More recent research, especially looking at mitochondrial DNA, has found that mutation rates can be all over the place. In fact, one study in the journal Science pointed out that it seems to mutate way, way faster than anyone had assumed.
And this is where it gets really mind-bending. Using the old, slower clock, scientists had estimated that mitochondrial Eve, our supposed common maternal ancestor, lived about 200,000 years ago. But that same Science article pointed out that if you use the new, much faster mutation rates they observed, her age plummets. It shrinks all the way down to just 6,000 years.
So what do you do with all this? We've got evidence from our bodies, our brains, our genes, and some of it seems to point in really different directions. This has led to some vastly different ways of piecing the puzzle together. So let's look at 2 contrasting views presented in the source materials.
One perspective you'll find is this idea of irreducible complexity. The argument goes that some biological systems are like a mousetrap. You can't build a mousetrap one piece at a time, because it only works when all the parts are there together. Take one piece away, and it's useless. The argument here is that such complex systems couldn't have evolved slowly, because the halfway versions wouldn't have worked.
And then there's another perspective, which comes from creationist sources. This view interprets all this data through a theological lens. It proposes that the huge gap we see between humans and animals is not the result of a shared history, but is instead intentional, a reflection of a unique act of creation that sets humanity completely apart from the rest of the animal kingdom.
Which leaves us right here, with the ultimate question. After looking at all this evidence, our strange upright bodies, our incredible minds, and the complicated, contested story written in our genes, how do you explain it? How do you explain the profound, undeniable uniqueness of being human? That's a question that data alone just can't answer.